Okay, today's session is Teach with Blackboard. My name is Adam Pochis. I'm our Director of Academic Technology and Client Services here at CSU-Pueblo. And today we're going to walk through an overview of how you can teach with Blackboard. So we're going to just talk conceptually. It's going to be a little bit more on the nuts and bolts. I'm going to point you to some very specific tools and areas that you're going to want to focus on. We're going to skip over certain tools, so you may see me kind of briefly discuss something but not go into depth. So that's why I did share how to learn Blackboard. So one of the things that we'll take a look at is our agenda. So this is a forefront that I usually put on most of our trainings that do with Blackboard, just to give you get you up to speed as to what we're doing, what some of the perspectives are, and what we're going to do going forward. The bulk of the session is going to be in that Blackboard with the sub-bullet points about recording, posting instructional materials, copying content. That's going to be a really helpful section for you. But I want to frame it up for you. We have a couple things that we're doing, especially with current events, to really push the usage of Blackboard. And I wanted just to share with you some of the faculty voices that we heard when we made a transition into the remote scenarios that we've been seeing since last spring. So we quickly transitioned into Blackboard at that point and had hosted a few surveys on the login page of Blackboard for both faculty and students. And so we just wanted to kind of check their temperature on how they felt about transitioning to new technology, the idea of teaching remotely or in a hybrid kind of element with kind of online components and in-class components. And these are some of the things that we're hearing. So just to put context to it, it feels like there was some need to better understand how to communicate with students, not implementing too many tools because it could be overly stressful, ensuring that you knew how to effectively use Blackboard and Zoom and other kind of tools that are going to make you a little bit more efficient in the classroom. And then just how to do it, some of the things and how to do that. So we've had a bunch of sessions during this Webinar Pro series that have talked about more of the pedagogical elements, the things that you can do in engaging your students. There is a full self-paced teaching course that you can go through that's really helpful on more of that pedagogical side. We do have the Blackboard videos and many trainings like this, and we'll have a few more during convocation just to unpack Blackboard. When we looked at the student voices, they had similar things. They just wanted to make sure there was stability. They wanted to make sure there were things in the course materials, such as Blackboard, and making sure they understood what the expectations are of the faculty members. They also talked about recording lectures that they may not be able to attend so they can watch them at another time, or if they had a connectivity issue, they would have access to that lecture at a place that they may have a little bit better connectivity. So we listened to those, and of course we've expanded our insights on all the various peer institutions, the work that's being done across the world in terms of how do you teach online, or how do you teach in a way where we're in current events. And you may have certain students in the classroom, you may have certain students at home, distancing and whatnot. So today's session is really just to hit those needs on the nuts and bolts of the technology aspects. I will kind of talk about two technologies today, Blackboard and a little bit on Zoom. One thing to take note is on August 9th, that's this coming Sunday, Blackboard will be down. We're taking it down for a couple days, 5 days, to migrate it into what's called a cloud instance of Blackboard. So we currently host our Blackboard on premise. We run our own servers, we have our own staff that maintains that system amongst the many other systems. Well, when we transitioned to more of a remote mode, we wanted to ensure that we had the stability, the ability to scale, that it wasn't going to create issues in the system. We did have a little bit of issue actually right when we transitioned, and Blackboard was a little up and down for a few days there until we were able to stabilize the environment. We found that was just a bug, but we still wanted to make the move into the cloud migration. What that does for us is that it's going to make it so that we are not managing the server side of Blackboard. There should not be any more maintenances going forward. Typically twice a year, we take Blackboard down for a maintenance for 2 or 3 days. So, 6 days a year is actually a lot of time, especially when you're running classes basically every single day of the year. So there was a question if you should get on your course before we go to the cloud. It actually doesn't matter. We will shut the system down. You won't have access after Sunday. And when it comes back up, you'll be right where you left off. So if you'd like to jump in just to get your kind of acclimate to the environment, go ahead, just check it out. But we will be transitioning, so there will be no access for that week. So that downtime is August 9th to the 14th. We anticipate likely going down on midday on Sunday, so about 12 p.m. Let's just take a quick preview of what you can expect if you're going to be teaching on site in the classroom. So you may have a setup like this, a computer on a lectern. You'll have a dock camera. You'll also have a web camera. This is just a view from an instructor view. This might be a face-to-face student view. And as you can tell on that screen, that may be the same kind of screen that a remote student might be seeing as well in a Zoom call, similar to what we're doing today. We also have full HD webcams that are going to be in each of those rooms so that you can have synchronous Zoom sessions. There's just some notes about staying within 12 feet of that webcam for optimum audio. I'm projecting myself fairly well today so that the audio picks up. The webcam does not capture whiteboards and chalkboards very consistently. So we are suggesting that you use the integrated dock cam that we have. The dock cam will be able to take a 5x7 sheet of paper. That's the one that we've tended to find that worked best. And you can write on that piece of paper and it can project it to the room. You can project it to your remote participants. It's a great way to maintain some sort of an semblance of like a whiteboard or a chalkboard and be able to virtually broadcast that. When we were doing this to just chalkboards and whiteboards with just a standard webcam, it was not picking it up very well. It was really difficult to read. So with all of that, when we start really thinking about going into the fall semester or any semester really outside of even current events, is you have to have a centralized point. And why I say you have to have is it's become more of an expectation as we move forward. And before I go on, I've noticed that there will be some questions that are going to be popping up. I may not be able to get to them all in context, but I will address some of them near the Q&A session near the end. As far as getting a dot cam for an online course, we have dot cams on site, but if you're going to be teaching from your own home, you may look at investing in one, or we may have a few for checkout, but those are going to be a hot commodity. We're having really, there's honestly a big shortage of technology across the world because everyone's gobbling it up for kind of remote instruction. And so sourcing materials has been very difficult, and we had enough to kind of outfit a lot of our campus and have a few backups where things break. But some of these tools like Zoom, you get that given to you by the institution. We can get you that set up. Obviously, you get your Blackboard shell and you'll get a few other things. But webcams, dot cams that might be leveraged at home, like I said, we're really short on those and we've checked out a lot of them. But getting back into the Blackboard shell, what the shell is that one-stop shop for pretty much all the students in being able to see what's going on in that class. And I had mentioned about it being an expectation. If you start looking at the landscape and what's happening in K through 12, a lot of those K through 12 schools have some sort of an semblance of an LMS, which Blackboard is. It's a learning management system. And so they are able to give grades out in there. They're able to give materials out to students. And what we've done is you are going to get a shell every single time a new course is developed or created for you as an instructor. And within that shell, you're going to have a navigation structure. So we used some standards-based practices to build out that shell. So the idea at first is the shell is the first contact for many of the students to build your teaching presence. And so if you've gone to some of our other sessions, you know we've been talking really a lot about the teaching presence in the course. This is the first kind of look of you as the instructor as to what you can present in that course. And this is going to be the touch point throughout the duration of the semester. Students can get it to it at 24/7. So use this as your communication vehicle. Post all the things that you typically may have handed out in a classroom into your Blackboard course. And we're going to show you how to do some of that today. So the particular default shell that we have is easily customizable, and you can do that in a variety of different ways. We're not trying to dictate to how you are going to teach your course. We realize that each discipline, each course is going to have a very specific look on how you're going to approach it as an instructor. Now, what we're trying to do is build in some features. So if you look on this thing on the lower right-hand side, there's a lot of features that students would be able to use to look at research guides were provided by our librarians so that you can go in and get to a specific guide and know the various databases and research avenues that you might have for your discipline. Links directly to the library website, tutoring services that are online. You also have a folder with instructor resources just to give you some more insight right within the shell of your course, and as well as some tech requirements. But when you look at that, we base that structure off of other really good design principles. And if you're familiar with Quality Matters, we've kind of framed it after that. And so I wanted to share with you kind of the 8 guiding principles, so to speak, when you think about course design. You want to keep these things in mind as you approach building in Blackboard. And it's going to make it a lot easier for you. It's going to also make it a lot easier for your students to be able to understand where they're at in the course and really how you structure that content. So you want to choose a meaningful organization scheme. And so when we say that, is you typically are going to be delivering content. It may be on a weekly basis. You may have one topic that goes over the course of a couple weeks. Or you may have other kinds of ways that you'd structure that content, but that idea is called chunking. You're going to chunk your content in a similar way throughout the duration of your course. So we're just saying whatever you do in that first chunk should be replicable through the remainder of your course. So a great example of that is if you have a particular topic you want, and in that topic, you're going to post a reading, and then a video, and then a short quiz, and then finally some sort of an assignment. You would probably expect to duplicate that same structure in each of the chunks that you build from there forth, so that students, as they go to that, know what to expect, kind of know what to find, and know what you're looking for as an instructor. So you don't always have to do it by duration. There's a lot of people that will break it down by week, and that seems to work, but topic is also helpful as well. I can tell you, if you're just starting out, breaking it down by week seems to be one of the easier ways to approach it. Second, you want to use very specific and accurate language to label those menu items and files. We find this a lot of the time that students will be going to a particular resource, and if it's not adequately labeled, there's no reason they should click it, and they don't click it. So we're saying give it a very good name, and also give some context as to what they might be clicking and why they should be clicking that. Blackboard will offer that, and you'll see that in just a minute when we jump into Blackboard Live to check this out. So your menus are customizable. You can reorganize those menus. You can put things in there. You have basically a blank canvas to work with here. We've just got you there a little bit further with that default shell. Additionally, you want to be consistent. We kind of covered that in that first tip, but regardless what you do, have some consistency throughout those weeks. Have some consistency in how you label your navigation. Make sure you're using, if you're going to put everything in all capitals, and put everything in all capitals in a specific area if you have that in the navigation, just so you can find your way through that. Provide direct access to frequently used items. So that means if you're using a third-party tool, or there's a certain site that you're linking them to that's outside that you're frequently going to, go ahead and put it into your navigation structure. There's no reason to bury it deep in there, or just tell them at some point, hey, there's this other resource there. Build it into your course. Build those aspects into the things that you're looking for. Limiting the levels of navigation to 3. Now, if you're just starting out, this may not be quite an issue, but within Blackboard, you can build folders into folders into folders, and it can go down the rabbit hole pretty quickly. As we've looked and we've done some user interface design, looking and analyzing how people really navigate Blackboard or websites, we know that once you start putting more levels of navigation, the further away you get, the more difficult it is for them to get to that content, and there's a likelihood they may never find it. Use visual cues. We're talking about hierarchy here. We're using dividers. We're using headings. You're using different things to break apart the content on the page. Within the navigation itself, you saw on that earlier navigation pane, there was a divider between some sections in that navigation. And I'll point that out in a second here once we jump into Blackboard. Try to make it easy so as the eyes navigate around in the Blackboard interface, you're able to see where things are broken out into different chunks. Provide a starting point. That means when a student first gets into their course, don't just land them in the course with nowhere to go. We built in a getting started menu. You can go ahead and rename that to whatever you might feel is appropriate for your course, but that getting started should just provide the context of how they get into the course, what those expectations might be. We did line out some information in a getting started for you. It just talks about the buttons, the browsers, and the different things that they might need to use to effectively engage in a Blackboard course. And then finally, this is a big one, get input from others on your course structure. That means talk with other folks. You have peers, colleagues, instructional designers that are on campus. You want to work with those folks to be able to get that input. So one of the big things that we've done with Blackboard in the last month is we've integrated our Zoom with Blackboard, meaning that Zoom is now available within Blackboard courses. That means you can schedule meetings right within Blackboard. You can also record those meetings and it'll show right back up in the Blackboard course. So students that might be attending remotely or students that want to just review a lesson that they attended should have access to those recordings. So one of the things that you'll need to ensure is that you have a Zoom account. If you contact our help desk, and I'll give their number and their information at the end of the session, you can request a full Zoom account. We'll get you one of those, and it will be set up through your CSU-Pueblo email account. You can start, schedule, stop, join meetings, and look at your recordings right into this integration. The one thing that you are working on right now is that it has a 15-day duration on that recording. So 2 weeks for those students to take a look at that recording. Part of that is we're fighting against how much space we have to hold those recordings. So you can download them if you want to keep them a little bit more long-term, and we can also help you understand where you can put those recordings, like on YouTube, or host it in a different video streaming area. So at this point, we're going to jump into Blackboard. We're going to go take a look at the various tools and pieces that we're going to discuss. So let's start with talking about how you integrate Zoom into Blackboard. I'm just going to pause on this screen for just a moment to let you know my email address if you need to contact me directly. Typically, I'll be getting you to one of our specialized staff in whatever area we might be working with. That could be multimedia, it could be our client services group, it could be our technicians, or it could potentially be our educational technology area. If you're looking to submit a ticket and get some information on getting your Zoom account or just having access issues in general, you can visit the csupueblo.edu/IT website. There is a submit ticket button there that will get you right into our ticketing system. So let me go ahead and share my screen a little differently here so we can jump into Blackboard. Okay, so everyone should be seeing Blackboard at the moment. If you would like to follow along, had another screen, you can do that too, log into your Blackboard. Sometimes it's hard to do if you have one screen because I'm sharing and it kind of overtakes your screen and it's hard to see if you make it a little bit smaller. But we'll go ahead and go and point a few things out. So actually I already logged in, so let me just back out one more time and just explain where we're at. So when you first get to Blackboard, this is a great place to see what's happening. There's a lot of announcements that are going to be under that login page. If you're wondering how I got to this login page, how do you even get to Blackboard, is you start on our website. So if you're on our website, even the home page, there is a white bar that's at the top of our website. You click on faculty and staff, it's going to get you right to this gray bar where you can click on Blackboard, and that's going to take you right to your login page. Once you get to that login page, take a quick look at all the various notes that are on there. You can see the upcoming downtime with the countdown timer. You can also see some of the other sessions that you can get involved in as we move forward. So you put in your credentials and you log into the interface. And we typically in the Blackboard Basics class or in that YouTube link that I provided give you very specific details on every aspect of Blackboard. So I'm not going to really talk about a lot of that right now, but I'm giving you pro tips, the quick tips, the things that you're going to want to go to if you're utilizing Blackboard. So one of the first things that I would suggest you learn about is how you can organize and disable and show courses in this course menu. This is going to list all your courses that you're teaching as an instructor. It doesn't list them in any particular order. Sometimes you get new courses, they go to the bottom. Sometimes they go in the middle. It's based off of alphabetical order and a few other things that are happening behind the scenes. The quick thing to do is if you highlight this menu, there's a little cog in the upper right-hand area there. You can click on it, and it's going to show you all the courses you're enrolled in. You can deselect checkboxes for the things you don't want to see in that menu. You can organize things in that menu to stack them in the way that you like. And once you hit submit, that menu will be reorganized as you had set it up. Another thing that we look at is in this menu, you typically see something that says not currently available. That means your class is not turned on or for students to see. It's available for you to build, but not for you for students to see. How you work with that is you go over to this quickly. This is an imported third-party tool that we put in here, and you can click this little course availability, see all the courses you have, and then toggle their availability to on or off. Relatively simple feature. One of the things that we will talk about in a later piece once we get into Blackboard is the communication aspects and where you can go to find communication. But one of the things that you can do is you can en masse post announcements in all your classes or send an announcement to all of your students. You can do that right in the post announcement or send email button, select all of the courses you like to send a notification to, and then you can even click this button and email them. So it would post an announcement in your class, it would email all of the students in all of the classes, and so you kind of have a really good way to communicate with a whole broad stroke of all your students in the system. So with going a little quickly, we're going to jump right into a Blackboard course and start going through the list of bullet items for this particular session. So we have about 30 minutes left, and I'm going to really hit those high points, and hopefully we'll have enough time to open it up for some questions. I have a relatively hard stop at 4 today to go into my next meeting. So one of the first things that you're going to want to really look at is once you've acquainted yourself with Blackboard and maybe even watched the first 10 videos, would be a good point to kind of pick up from where I'm going to go from right now. So the first one is, how do you record into your Blackboard course, or how do you set up a place for that to happen? Well, you'll notice there's this navigation menu. This is a default shell of Blackboard that you may have received and you already have for your courses. It has a lot of different areas in there. Just by clicking into these little areas, you can see what's going on. For instance, Getting Started has a great bit of information already in there for students to take a read on. You can add to it as needed. Well, what if you wanted to add another item to this menu? This menu is created with tool links and then what we'll call content areas, which are essentially folders. So if I were to go to like this Getting Started folder, which I did, this is a content area. This is where you're able to add content by using this Build Content button and attaching items in there through one of these different tools. I'll tell you, item is the biggest one that you will add into a majority of your areas in here. But I want to add to this menu. How do I add a direct link here? Now, I'm going to just say off the bat that you typically do not put all your weekly modules in this menu. You typically put it one layer deep in this course modules folder, and then you build out some of those items within that area. But to add a tool link, and the tool link we're going to add right now is to Zoom Classroom or a Zoom meeting. What you do is you would highlight the plus button that's in the upper left-hand corner of that navigation menu, and you're going to notice there's a few items that you can create. So since I'm here, I'm just going to quickly say, if I created content area and then you just called it stuff, I mean, not the greatest of names, but just for this particular instance I wanted to show you, I'll say, here's my stuff folder available to students. And when I hit submit, what it does is it drops it down to the bottom of this list. You can click on that folder, and now you have a blank, empty folder that you can start adding your content into. If I wanted to remove that little item from that list, I hit this drop down to the right, I hit delete. It's going to give me some warnings, and I can delete that content. So I am going to go through that one more time. So how to get there, in the upper left-hand corner of navigation, there's a plus sign. If you're not seeing the plus sign, there's a big chance that your edit mode may be turned off. Edit mode is on the far right-hand side of your course. Let me see if I can zoom this in a little bit. It'll give you a little bit better view. Sometimes it looks a little bit small when we're casting this. So again, there's this plus sign. You can hit content area to create those content areas and add your content. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to create a Zoom link, because this is a tool. We've integrated it. We want it to be in our course. So I click tool link. Now it's going to give me the ability to name it whatever I want. I can call it my video session, my video classroom, my Zoom classroom, whatever you'd like. I've been going with Zoom classroom for now. So I will put in a Zoom classroom. And then as far as the type of tool link, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and through all these tools and click on Zoom meeting. I do want that to be available to my users, and then I'm going to click submit. What that does is it creates a link to a Zoom meeting. Now, since we've integrated that tool in the system, there's no real work that you have to do as an instructor to do anything to get this working. You'll notice that I am dragging that item at this left-hand drag handle, so I can like drag it up and down and place it in my menu. Wherever I drop it, that's where it's going to stick. And next, as long as you have a Zoom account with the CSU-Pueblo.edu URL, when you click this link, it's going to go right into Zoom. You'll notice you're still in Blackboard, but you're able to start scheduling your meetings in Zoom. So you'll click Schedule New Meeting. You're going to go through setting up your class. So in this particular course, you may put what your class is. Let's just say it's Math 101. I would suggest putting the date as well. 6 today, 2020. You don't really have to put a description, but you could identify the time that's going to start, the duration, and then a little bit lower down, you'll have some additional options that you can choose based off what you're looking to do. I tend to use waiting room. You saw that when you first got into this session today. That's where you're kind of sitting there waiting for me to allow you in the room. That gives you a chance to have a breath of air as you prep your course, get everything in without students dropping in until you're ready to allow them in. There's ways to admit all, admit single students. You can also remove students from your room. There is a Zoom 101 recording that you will have access to shortly. You'll be enrolled in our Blackboard Professional Learning course, which just has access to all the sessions that we've had during this Webinar Pro series, including the recording today. So when I hit save, what I am going to do is I have created a meeting in my course. So I typically click this link to get right back into my course so I can kind of back myself out and get into the full Blackboard experience. And again, if I click on this Zoom class, it's going to show you the course that we just set up. So this is the meeting that I set up. So one of the things that you would do is you get into the classroom. If you were going to be doing a synchronous session, you'd hit start and you would be broadcasting your session. Now, students can synchronously join that session at that time, and they would do the same thing. They would log into Blackboard, they'd click that Zoom classroom link, and then they would just see a join. They wouldn't be able to start it, they'd be able to join. Now, up to you, once the class session starts streaming, you can click the record button, very much like I just did at the beginning of this session. Right now, we don't have it quite turned on. It will be turned on in the next week or two, but you'll be able to use cloud recordings. So what that does is, as you synchronously teach your course, it's also saving it into a cloud recording. So at the end of your session, it's going to process the video, and then students that revisit this section of the course can click on cloud recordings and look at all the cloud recordings for that particular session. You will have the ability to toggle the visibility of certain recording sessions if you so fit want to do that. So that's it in terms of Zoom Classroom. You just need to have a Zoom account and then be able to drop that link into your course. So one of the next things that we want to do is, how do we post those instructional materials? How do we set up a course with all these fun things that we're starting to see in here? So I'm going to go down to this course modules. This is a great place to start. So you click on course modules, and what that's going to show you is the content that you can start putting in that module. So we use this as like a secondary navigation. You first click on modules, and then inside there, we would think that there would be multiple folders. That goes to that naming convention, that talks to that consistency we were talking about before. But what we're wanting to do is chunk your course out. A module is a generic name to us. You can use it if you'd like. You can use topics, you can use weeks, you can use chapters, whatever is going to most make sense to you as an instructor, you will want to chunk your course out like that. If you need help with even how to approach that or doing some teach planning, there is the self-paced course that takes around 10 hours that really just talks about pedagogy and all the things about teaching in Blackboard in general, or not just Blackboard, but teaching online and in hybrid. But in this particular thing, here's the nuts and bolts. So if I want to build a piece of content, for instance, if I want to go into this module 1, click right into it. To add content into it, I highlight the build content button. Now the drop-down is going to show a lot of different things that you'll have access to, but I'm going to tell you right now, one of the biggest ones is going to be item. First off, when you add items into Blackboard, we're talking about PDFs, maybe PowerPoints, maybe a Word document. It could also be some links. It could be a few other things. We're asking not to put videos in there. Video files by default are too big, and Blackboard is not designed to stream big video files, but it's more just to deliver content and structure your content. So how you get video files that are not like your recording of the class, but maybe it's a YouTube video or something like that, you can embed them in Blackboard. So we're not actually holding the video itself, we're just linking to that video and you see it in the course. There are a bunch of other options in here. So web links, if you want to link them out to like a website specifically. And there's a whole bunch of other things. So you see there's a thing called a learning module. There's also a lesson plan. There's a syllabi. These are baked in specific to Blackboard things. I honestly do not use a few of these things. Learning module, lesson plan, and syllabus, I don't use them. But what I do is just use my item to really make that work. So the question is, if we had an assignment to read a chapter in, could you include the chapter as an item? You absolutely could. Now, that starts to get into more of the copyright scenario. It is technically in a locked down section of the course. So if you start looking at the documentation about copyright law, there's also some provisions in the Teach Act that just kind of say what teachers can use inside of the classroom. You can't publish or take a full book and put it in there. There's things like the OER effort, so open educational resources, that you would be able to put in there freely. There's a big OER push on this campus, and we can get you into the direction of that team if you're looking to develop or even utilize OER resources. But in certain scenarios, yes, you can put chapters in there. If there's students that don't have a book and you have a very specific section of that book, maybe it's just a few paragraphs or something, you can definitely get that in as a document. One thing to keep in mind is if you're pasting like a PDF in there, there are accessibility concerns with that. You need to make sure it's machine readable. There are ways for it to do an OCR scan of those PDFs. Typically, if you had a Word document that you put in there, or if you had a Word document saved out as a PDF document, it's relatively accessible. We're just saying things that have been scanned don't tend to be accessible. But it's easy as clicking on that item. It's going to bring up, let me just zoom out just a hair here because I'm going to need to show you that. So once you click on the item, you're giving it a name. So you have to give it some sort of name. You can give your additional context here, why you want to click this item. Why would you as a student want to even engage with this particular item? So this is typically a little bit more fleshed out than just a two-word answer. You can put a lot more in there. And then finally you go down and you just browse your computer for what item you're wanting to attach in that course. So for instance, if I want to jump down here, I don't even know what I have in here. I'm just going to grab one randomly, and you drop in an item. You saw I browsed, found a PDF, dropped it in the course. And then at the bottom, there's some different things that you can do. You can permit users to see it right off the bat. You can hide it from their visibility and toggle that later on. Sometimes people want to have it open up at a specific time, at a specific date. So you could build out an entire course, and at a certain cadence, things will become visible. So it looks like the course is building itself as you go through the semester. I find that once you put those availability restrictions on there, if you're not really savvy with Blackboard or how that works, sometimes an item can kind of not be turned on at the right timing, but you can go ahead and use that, and that's in most of the items we have. But once I hit submit, it's going to drop that item right into Blackboard. So here's an example of what I just created. Item name, there's that context, and then there's the item that you can click on. So the student can click that and download it. If you had an item already in there, you just highlight this item, you hit that drop-down arrow, and you can hit edit. It's going to take that, take you right back to the screen we're at. You can edit it, add more context, do whatever you need to do, add, remove additional attachments and whatnot. So that is a huge tool within this system. So that kind of goes about posting instructional materials in there. I'm not going to have enough time to really unpack this tool to its full potential, but those videos will. There is an assignment tool. There's a common question of how do I have students turn in assignments remotely? I don't want my email inbox blowing up with assignments, and I want to be able to just grade them virtually. How do I do it? Well, that's under your assessments tool. There's an assignment tool there, and you'll be able to click that. And that tool is going to look very similar to the item that we just created. The only difference is once you get a little bit further down, you're going to notice there's due dates that you associate with it, a points possible that you throw in there, and you could even integrate a Blackboard rubric where it would allow you to use the rubric to grade this document. We're not going to go into rubrics today, but just want to let you know it was there. And then a little bit further down, you have a slew of details that you can submit, like submission details. You can set it through a plagiarism or originality checker, the safe assign that's integrated with the system. You can give multiple attempts for that assignment. You can do a lot of cool items right in here. I'm just going to tell you one quick thing with the plagiarism checker is if you do have something checked for plagiarism and you're intending that document to be a built document over the course of multiple weeks. So let's say you were going to build a research paper and the first time you turn it in, it's just a draft. But you as the instructor want to do a plagiarism or originality check. Well, if you just do the full plagiarism originality check, it could potentially put it in this global references database. And so the second time that they put it in, it's going to say it's fully plagiarized because it's looking at that old instance of their draft that they turned in. So I typically hit exclude this submission from that institutional database for the first round if you're doing a full-on research paper. But if you're only turning it in once, and this is the one and only time, I keep that off. It will do that originality check, and you'll have some data on the other end. Again, I don't have time to go through the full-on item, but we will I want to let you know that is the way that you would assign assignments. One thing that I did do is when I clicked on it and I added the points possible, is it does put a grade center column already in there for you. Additional things to keep in mind that sometimes you'll have partner content that might be your publisher that you're working with, and they have some additional third-party tools and things that you can work on. You can find that in your tools menu. So you would be working with a vendor or publisher specifically on how to use that content and potentially going in their system. So if that's something you want to look at, we can definitely have a consultation and discuss that. Now, I did have a question, and somebody was saying that they were not allowed to edit items under syllabus and more. And so I'm not exactly sure where you were looking at that, but one thing you might look at is to ensure that your edit mode is turned on. So if I were to click my edit mode off, for instance, on this upper right-hand corner, notice when I highlight my items, there's no drop-down box. There's no real way for me to edit this item. So you do have to turn edit mode on. That's in the upper right-hand corner of the course. Those little drop-downs will be there, and then it'll allow you to get into that edit mode. Okay, so going on, copying content through courses, moving content through courses. Maybe in this particular module, this item name was not put in the right section. What I can do is I can hit this drop-down button, and you're going to notice there's a copy and a move there. If I were to move, I can move it between classes, and I can move it between, or I can copy it between classes or within the class itself. Unfortunately, at this point, it is not drag and drop. I can't drag it into another section. This is you have to go into this drop-down, and you have to hit copy or move. So if I were to hit move, for instance, it's going to bring up this, and it's say, what course do you want to move it in? It will pick the course that you're in, but if you were to wanting to move it to another course, you click the drop down, find the course you'd want to do it, and then you click browse to figure out what destination you like to put it in. What you're going to get is a menu that really looks like that navigation menu, but it's a treed out menu. So for this instance, I don't want to click on this. I clicked on course modules. I'm going to move this one back, and I'm going to hit submit. And it's now no longer in my module folder, and I'll click on my course modules, and you're going to notice here's that new item that I created, and I moved it right out of there. Now, if I needed to delete an item, it's as easy as clicking this drop down and hitting delete and hitting OK. So Abai, I will address that near the end of the session. We can take a look on it. It looks like it might be a very specialized issue in regard to the error message you're getting. So moving forward, when we start talking about assignments and the ways that you can grade those assignments and how you can kind of engage with that, if you look a little bit further down on your Blackboard page, there's a really big delineation between two sections, and that's the word course management. Now, students will not have this section of their navigation. Everything above this is really student view, and you're kind of crafting it as you click around on some of these resources. Some of these are resources to outside resources. So if I click on research guides, for instance, it's going to take you outside of Blackboard and bring up a research guide that our library puts together and integrate it in Blackboard. So it's not something you really can affect on this content. This content is delivered by the library, and it's specific to kind of the course that you're in. But some of these other ones, you can navigate, and you saw how we just added some content to course modules and areas there. But below that, course management, think about that as your menu as the instructor. You are able to pull the bells and whistles for all the big things behind the scenes. So for instance, course tools. Course tools is going to look like some of the tools we saw up at the top, but it's going to give you to some administrative abilities with those tools. So for instance, if I click down on the tools and I clicked on test surveys and polls, this is going to take me to our test surveys and polls area. So what test surveys and polls are, it's a way that you can build online tests. So it's as easy as saying, I want to build an online test. I want to call this one test one, or test one. And I'm gonna hit submit. And then you go ahead and start adding questions to my test. And again, I'm not gonna be able to go through this. There's a really great video on how to build a test, but you build out your test and it's not deployed. It doesn't show up in exams or quizzes or tests up here. It's just behind the scenes. It's for you to continually iterate on and build it out. So if I'm just gonna throw a quick one in here. I'll just throw an essay question into this particular test just to kind of show you something here. So I'm not gonna be very original here. I'm just going to put the question of what, just so I can get something in here. So I already have a test, a single question test. If I were to go up here now into my exams and quizzes, and I were going to go to this assessment and add a test, I click on that. There is that test one I just created. I don't have to deploy it. I'm in the deploy mode right now. I'm getting ready to put this in the course. So maybe I'm not ready. I'm going to cancel out of this. How I'd edit it is I go back down to this course tools, and I accidentally clicked achievements. I meant to just click course tools, but I go down, I click on that test surveys and polls. I click on my tests. There's no difference between quizzes and tests other than what we named it. So basically everything in test, it's quizzes, tests, exams, however you want to use it, whatever vernacular is there for you. So if I click, so you can see right now, it says test 1. Deployed to no. So that's just saying this is still editable by me. I can go in and I can keep building it out. When I'm ready to deploy it, because there was a lot of settings and a lot of things that you just saw that I had done, when I'm ready to deploy it is when I go into this other folder. Then I'm clicking, okay, I've already built the test. I already figured out the assessment and how I want that test to look. Now I'm like changing my thought process, and now I'm going to deploy it. When do I want it to be available? How many points is it? Well, the points will be already dictated by how many questions are in there, but you know, at what time frame, or what do I want to show my users once this test is deployed and they give the wrong answer? Do I want to show them just feedback? Do I want to show them the right answer? Well, you do that here when you deploy the test and you click assessment, you click that test that you have, and you're going to go to a whole menu of structure that allows you to deploy that test. So you can go ahead and look at all those items. And generally, you would submit that test, and then you would have a test that's available for students to take right in Blackboard. To make sure we're on time, we have about 10 more minutes. I wanted to show you just a few more items before we close up the session and open up for any overview answers or question and answer period. So in this course management menu underneath here, I want to point your attention to a really, really big tool, and that is your Grade Center tool. So if you click on Grade Center, first off, there is a needs grading. This is a cool tool. If you're using that assignment function, you click needs grading, and this is going to show you everything that's been turned in by your students. You're going to have a whole bunch of criteria up here that you can sort by certain assignments, categories, different things that were submit. It timestamps it for all your users. If you set up due dates on your assignments, which I totally suggest you do, it will mark ones that are late. It goes down to like the millisecond when that thing was submitted to Blackboard. So it's really great. But then it also brings it up where you can go through the assignment and you can annotate on certain pieces of the assignment. So that's where you would go for that. Now there's a second way to get to some of those assignments as well. And that's really just going back down to this menu, clicking on Full Grade Center, and getting into your Full Grade Center view. So I just have a generic user in this course, but you see a last name, a first name, what their username is, their student ID, and a few other pieces of information about the course. You'll even see the last time that that particular user logged into the course. But remember when I just deployed that test? Well, there's that test that we deployed just a little bit ago right here. So I'm able to go in here and if somebody turned in that test, which they haven't at this point, but I'm able to click this little drop-down arrow, and I could even go and look at the view grade details. I could go get to that needs grading screen that we saw, but instead I'm just going to it based off the cell that I'm on within that Grade Center. That's just a quick tip on how you use some of the things in the Grade Center, and some columns will show up. Let's say you just wanted to add a generic column into the Grade Center. You wanted to track some sort of activity there that you really didn't formally put into Blackboard. It's as simple as hitting Create Column, giving it some sort of name. So let's just say check your understanding or something like that. There's a little verbal quiz or something that you put in there. I don't know, I spelled that wrong, but that's okay. And then a little bit lower, you have some options. I typically display score as my primary option, and I give it a score, so maybe 10 points. Really all you need is a point value and a title, and you hit submit. And now you have a column in your grade center. So I'll have to scroll over, check your understanding. There it is. If I want to add a grade, click right into there. And you'll notice when I click in there, there's this little grade information bar. Shows you how many points possible, a little bit more information about that column. And you just type in the grade and hit enter. Now notice the second I hit enter, as long as your course is available for students, students will have access to seeing that grade instantly. So every time you hit enter, it will show for those students. One last little tip about the Grade Center. There's a lot more to unpack about here, but one last tip is this Manage button. The Manage button is a big one. It's going to be where you can find a lot of different ways to manipulate your Grade Center in different kind of viewpoints. You can change your schemas for your different grades. So if you have like an A, an A-, B, B-, you can set that up based off your breakdowns and where those breakpoints are. There's a lot to do in here, but the big one is column organization. If you click on column organization, what you get is a different viewpoint of your grade center. It's stacked. It allows you to reorder your grade center. It allows you to hide certain columns. There's a lot of different things that you can do within your grade center column organization screen. So just take note that it's there. One big thing that they just added, which is also scary, is a big delete button for multiple columns. They never had that in there before, and you had to do that on a basis of one at a time. So just note that that delete button is in the course management area. If you wanted to, you could also download your grade center. So you can do that, bring it into a specific file type. Just note that when you download your grade center, that it will be in an older XLS format. And if you change it by opening it in Excel, it will say, hey, this is an old format. You want to convert it? Do not convert it. Keep it the old format if you're intending to re-upload certain grades that you put into that document. Okay, to finalize kind of today's session, again, we've skittered across the top of the top items that you're going to be leveraging within Blackboard, is your communications. How do you keep consistent communications with your students? So one of the first things is your announcements. That is the first things that students see when they get into your course. So announcements is just by default that first area. Think about it as a corkboard for your class. That's your pin board. You are going to put little insights there. This is not where you put information about assignments or the full details of assignments. We saw an instructor that had built out their entire course in the announcements. And it's really problematic in the way that you navigate that and how it all works and how that goes down. The idea is it's very quick and conversational. Quick tips, quick heads up. You're changing a meeting time. You are about to deploy a test. Remember this item. And then you're kind of pointing them to go to somewhere else in the course. That's where your content's going to be. But what happens is when you create an announcement, it's going to ask for a subject. It's going to ask for a description. And then it's going to ask if there's a duration or a date restriction. So you can date restrict it. I typically just have no date restriction. One of the cool things is you can click on send an email immediately. So that means that anything that you put as a subject and description, and if you click that, right when you submit, it's going to send an email to everyone in the class with that information, and it's also going to pin that to the top of your class. Great tool to be able to leverage that. One thing just to be cautious of, and I've done this because I'm always being very specific about my spelling and things like that, is let's say you had an existing announcement. If you were to go to that announcement and edit it, make some changes, and you had clicked this send copy of announcement and you had submit that, and then you came back and edited and that was still checked, every time you went back and forth and edited, if that was selected, you'd be emailing your students every time. So just be careful that that's not selected if you're going to go and edit your information on there, unless of course you want to email them. Another area to communicate with your students will be through your sending the email button. So you can go right into that navigation menu down to send email. It's going to give you a few different options of how you can send email. If you want to just do everyone in the class, you click all users. It's going to pull everyone from that class and you can send one massive email. If you'd rather do it to groups or all student users only or select users, you just click this one down here. It'll list all the students for your course. You can click the student, put them in the selected category, and then draft your email or your notification. Typically, you want to click this box. That way you can get a receipt, so to speak, of this email in your inbox. There is no management of these emails. Once this goes off in the ether, it's done. There's not a place that shows that you sent this. This is the only way to get a copy of that email once you send it off. The last place that has some ability for communication is in your discussion forums. So if I click into discussion forums, just before I get in here, I did want to answer the question of Susan. The email in their Blackboard is their email for CSU-Pueblo. So it is integrated with their email accounts as a student. So every single email and send email is all about the emails that we have outside of Blackboard. So your first name dot last name at CSU-Pueblo email is the email that you would send from. All the students would be responding from their university issued emails. There's not a way to change that in the system. And that's by default because that's the official kind of communication system in Blackboard. And it cuts down on errors and big issues as to where we're sending things. So one of the last things is this discussion board. So in the discussion forums, what this does is it allows you to open up some cool discussions. Sometimes it's a good pedagogical way to approach engaging students, and you'll have questions and grading and different things that are going on. There's a general course questions that gets dropped in there. There's kind of default part of the shell. So what this is, it's like a traditional forum. If you've ever been in forums, there's really just an overarching kind of name of the forum. So we call this one general course questions. When someone clicks into the general course questions, they would be creating threads. So threads are topics, so to speak. So somebody may click on this and say, how do I take this particular test? And so this is a thread that just talks about tests from that point forward. So if anybody had questions on test, they'd be clicking in that test thread, and then there would be conversation that would be happening. So right next to the test thread, somebody might pop in there and create a new thread that talks about their project or something like that. And so now you have two threads, one that talks about tests, a second one that talks about projects. What's really great about this is that it's open to everyone in the course. So if a student were to post something, a peer may jump in and answer that before you can even get to them. So it's a really good place to have some discussion in the course. Just so you know, we did mention up in, I believe it's the getting started. Actually not, it's in the syllabus and more. There is a netiquette. We suggest you go and modify that. We just kind of put a boilerplate in there so you can know if you're going to use any of the discussion features, but what netiquette talks about are the ways that you might behave in an online environment, ways that you participate, and things that you can think of as someone in the class. So putting all caps in there kind of tends to mean you're yelling at someone. So, you know, just be watching of that context. It's really hard to gauge what people are saying through writing. So this might be something that would be helpful just if you're thinking of the discussion forums there. So right now, it's at the top of the hour. I can address a few questions, and then I'm gonna have to jump out. I can probably go for another 3 minutes. Any other questions or insights that I can provide for you today? And you can unmute your mics if you like, or jump on the call. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.